A woman with flowing hair, wrapped in a white robe, had the lower half of her body transformed into a fishtail. She is the legendary mermaid. An earthquake swept her from the bottom of the sea into a rock cave on the seaside. The rocks crushed her lower body, trapping her and preventing her from escaping. Nearby villagers who were fishing found the mermaid and offered her to the local wealthy lord. When the wealthy lord was about to reach out to hold the mermaid with his bare hands, the villagers stopped him. The villagers explained that the mermaid possessed a unique ability. By touching a human's body, she could erase their memories. At this time, the newly appointed political official, Dam Ryong, who was young and handsome, arrived. His bracelet on his wrist was as clear and delicate as water. The wealthy lord, wanting to bribe Dam Ryong, led the group to the pond at his home. Dam Ryong walked ahead of the group, and the mermaid gazed at him from the platform. Her eyes were clear and sorrowful, and Dam Ryong stared at the mermaid for a long time. The wealthy lord suggested to Dam Ryong that the mermaid's oil could preserve youth for years and was a priceless treasure. Dam Ryong understood the hidden meaning. The wealthy lord planned to use the mermaid to extract oil. Dam Ryong, using the wealthy lord's bribes and evidence of tax evasion as leverage, exchanged for ownership of the mermaid. Under the night sky, aboard a ship, Dam Ryong watched as the mermaid slowly swam into the ocean. From a distance, the wealthy lord, watching the mermaid swim away, promised to capture her again and kill Dam Ryong. The mermaid reached out her hand to him. Dam Ryong slowly extended his hand as well, and this sealed their fate for 400 years. Many years later, the handsome young man before you is the same one who lived 400 years ago. All because of one touch with the mermaid's hand, he traveled through time to meet her again in the modern era. Now, in this era, he is nothing like his past self. In the present, his name is Jun Jae. He bears the same face and is like a chameleon. At times, he is a charming player in the game of love, and at other times, he is a kind-hearted thief. In the world of deception and illusion, he is a master trickster, skilled in the art of deception, effortlessly playing different roles. He is an expert in hypothesizing and tricking his targets with ease. On this day, he, along with his accomplices Park Moo and Tae, was targeting the inspection staff. They disguised themselves as elevator repairmen to sneak into the unit. As they were stopped by security at the entrance, Jun Jae quickly analyzed the situation and used his sharp trick. He easily deceived the security guards and successfully entered the building. Jun Jae and Park Moo quickly entered the office, while Tae went to the rooftop and used a computer to control the entrance traffic lights, buying them time. Confidently, Jun Jae and Park Moo teamed up to impersonate prosecutors during the inspection, gaining the trust of the owner of investment company. They tricked her into transferring her assets into their account and then flew off to a beach resort. On the plane, a beautiful flight attendant told Jun Jae about the last mermaid in the world, said to reside in this sea. The mermaid found a bracelet worth 11 million at the bottom of the sea. The mermaid showed up again, gazed up at the sky, and put the bracelet on her wrist. At that moment, an earthquake suddenly struck. The mermaid desperately swam forward, but the massive wave swallowed her instantly. When she woke up, she realized she had been washed by the waves. Curious, she stood up and looked around. Sensing something was wrong, she glanced down and discovered her fishtail had turned into legs. Driven by curiosity, she jumped back into the sea, and her legs turned into a fishtail again. It turned out that when the mermaid left the water, her fishtail would turn into legs. Excited by this discovery, she swam around joyfully in the sea. Then she saw a man standing and quickly hid underwater. Jun Jae seemed not to notice her and turned away. Little did he know, the mermaid had set her sights on him. While Jun Jae was resting, a sudden noise woke him up. He went to the living room to check, only to find food scattered everywhere. Then he noticed the door to the wardrobe was open. When he walked in, he found the room in disarray. At that moment, he turned around and saw a pair of legs. Shocked, he fell to the ground. Gathering his courage, he pulled back the clothes and, to his surprise, found a beautiful woman hiding inside. The man let out a sigh of relief. He asked who the woman was and how she had ended up there. The mermaid didn't answer. Instead, she used the clothes to cover her face. The man looked closely and realized she was wearing his clothes. He became very angry and shouted, which prompted the mermaid to take a fighting stance. The man stepped forward, trying to get his clothes back. Feeling frustrated after being sneak attacked by the woman, he moved forward to demand an explanation. The mermaid kicked him again. By the time the mermaid emerged, the man was a bit annoyed. He decided to let it go, thinking it wasn't worth fighting with a woman. At that moment, the mermaid noticed the sea outside the window and runs toward it at full speed. Understandably, she may not have seen glass before. For safety reasons, the man tied the mermaid up and called the police. He also took pictures as evidence. He tried to open her hands to see what she had stolen, only to discover it was just a seashell. The man laughed at the sight. The police eventually took the mermaid away, and the man reviewed the pictures he had taken as evidence. Suddenly, he noticed the bracelet the woman was wearing looked unusual, so he quickly sent the photo to a friend to investigate. At this moment, the mermaid, who had left the sea for the first time, was filled with curiosity about the outside world. Back at the police station, she started playing with the tissue box, which made the police very angry. They yelled at her, but in the next second, the mermaid punched the police officer. The mermaid picked up a gun from the floor, and all the officers dropped to the ground in fear. Finding it boring, she went back to playing with the tissue box. Meanwhile, the man was flirting with a girl when he received a message from his friend, informing him that the woman's bracelet was worth at least $1 billion. Shocked, he covered his mouth in surprise, then immediately left without looking back, abandoning the girl. For the sake of the bracelet, Jun Jae headed to the police station to rescue the mermaid. He told the police that the mermaid was his wife, and that he had only called the police because of a fight they had. However, the officers didn't believe him. At this point, the man noticed the police were nice to hypnosis, so he took out a lighter and performed some tricks. The officers fell into a hypnotic state and envy a scene of Jun Jae and the mermaid getting married, convincing them of their relationship. Finally, the mermaid was released. Jun Jae apologized for what had happened earlier and extended his hand to shake hers as a gesture of peace, but the mermaid, completely unfamiliar with the outside world, didn't understand the gesture. Realizing there was no point, the man bluntly asked for the mermaid's bracelet. To his surprise, she immediately assumed a fighting stance. Seeing the familiar posture, Jun Jae became nervous, recalling how she had overpowered him before. Unsure of how strong she really was, he decided to switch tactics and softened his approach, offering to take her shopping instead. While waiting at a red light, the mermaid saw the figure on the light and started mimicking its exact pose, leaving Jun Jae completely surprised by her behavior. When they arrived at the mall, the mermaid was immediately captivated by the colorful decorations. Having never seen an elevator before, she was so frightened that she kept stepping back. Seeing this, Jun Jae confidently picked her up in a princess carry and, under the gaze of everyone around them, took her to the second floor. Noticing the mermaid's feet were covered in cuts and bruises, Jun Jae chose a pair of high heels for her. The mermaid had no idea what they were. Seeing her looking around cluelessly, Jun Jae finally decided to put the shoes on her himself. Next came the clothing section. As expected, the mermaid had no idea how to put on clothes. She simply put the garment over her head, causing everyone around to laugh. Embarrassed, Jun Jae quickly pushed her into the changing room. After getting dressed up, the mermaid looked at herself in the mirror and was absolutely stunned by her beauty. However, when she came out, Jun Jae was nowhere to be found. Left with no choice, the mermaid followed a clown wandering around the mall. When Jun Jae returned to look for her, he discovered she had already left, and he searched for her. Eventually, he found her in a corner, licking a lollipop. Jun Jae approached her, scolding her for not staying where she was, and then asked if she was hurt. The mermaid mistakenly thought the man was expressing concern for her. But what the mermaid didn't know was that Jun Jae was only interested in her bracelet. They then went to a restaurant to eat, but the mermaid had no idea how to eat properly. She just used her hands to grab the food, leaving Jun Jae embarrassed and covering his face. After the mermaid had eaten her fill, Jun Jae took out a lighter and performed a magic trick. The mermaid was mesmerized, unaware that Jun Jae had already switched her bracelet. Now that he had the bracelet, his mission was complete. He took the mermaid to a crowded place, told her he needed to use the restroom, and promised he would return shortly. The naive mermaid waited in the same spot for hours, but Jun Jae never returned. He had actually gone home to pack his bags and escape. By the time the mall closed, 2 elderly women came and ushered the mermaid out. Meanwhile, Jun Jae was driving, and when he saw the traffic lights, he remembered the scene from earlier that day. The woman had been so naive. Feeling guilty, he decided to go back to the mall to check if the mermaid was still waiting for him. When he arrived, he found her still standing in the same spot. Overcome with guilt, he took her to a hotel. The mermaid, still captivated by everything on land, began playing with the hotel room key card, finding it even more fun than the tissue box. She kept inserting and removing the key card over and over. Meanwhile, Jun Jae was taking a shower, but he couldn't stand the water going on and off repeatedly. Frustrated, he came out and grabbed the key card from her. When the mermaid saw Jun Jae looking at his computer, her curiosity got the better of her, and she grabbed it from him. She stared at the figures on the screen, shaking the computer as if trying to make them fall out. Jun Jae was almost driven mad by the mermaid, so he decided to ignore the problem, turned around, and went to his room to sleep. The mermaid, left alone, was laughing and crying at the computer, even mimicking Bruce Lee. Morning came quickly, and Jun Jae received a phone call from his boss. He was informed that the old couple he had robbed earlier had tracked his location through his phone, and they were on their way to catch him. Jun-jae realized he had to flee right away. After hurriedly packing his things, he left the confused mermaid behind and ran off alone. The next second, though, he came rushing back. It turned out the people chasing him had already arrived at the door. The courtyard was now full of gang members searching for him. What to do? Suddenly, Jun-jae had an idea. Just then, a group of gangsters burst through the door, but after a quick glance, they were terrified to see a ticking time bomb. The whole group of tough guys immediately hit the floor. After the countdown reached 0, they realized they had been tricked. This bought Jun-jae and the mermaid some time to escape, but they were quickly found again. Jun-jae grabbed the mermaid and they began running for their lives. At one point, a man caught Jun-jae, but the mermaid casually picked him up and threw him meters away. Jun-jae then found a bicycle, and the two of them embarked on escape. The mermaid was happily greeting passers-by, completely forgetting what was happening. As the gangsters closed in, she sprang into action. Ultimately, they were caught by the gangsters. Jun-jae told the mermaid to hide behind him, preparing for a hero's rescue. Just then, another group of gangsters arrived, and without hesitation, the mermaid threw one of them aside. Next, she executed a signature Bruce Lee move, knocking another one down. Her late-night movie watching paid off as she had mastered the moves quite well. In the end, Jun-jae managed to take down 3 of the thugs, but when he turned to show off to the mermaid, he realized that a whole group of gangsters had already fallen behind her. Suddenly, a man with a gun pointed it at Jun-jae, and unsurprisingly, he was taken away in a car. He told the mermaid not to follow. Little did he know, the mermaid had hopped on a bicycle. A woman on a bicycle was chasing after a car. Imagine that. 4 vehicles couldn't keep up with her speed. The mermaid quickly overtook the cars in front of her, leaving the people inside stunned, unaware that she was no ordinary woman. Jun-jae struggled to take control of the steering wheel as the car sped past the mermaid, barely managing to escape amidst the chaos. He took a long jump, standing on the bicycle and making a quick getaway. The gangsters behind her, however, did not give up the chase. They hid in a garden. While they were carefully hiding, the mermaid turned around and saw the thugs had caught up. Thinking it was time to show off her skills, the mermaid charged at them. At this moment, Jun-jae noticed the mermaid was missing and began searching around. Eventually, they bumped into each other at a corner. Jun-jae scolded the mermaid for running around, but she ignored him and pulled him to join her in swinging around in the garden. Jun-jae gently removed the leaves from the mermaid's head. In that moment, it felt like a romantic scene. They then rode their bicycles to an amusement park, where the mermaid spotted a roadside snack stall and, being a foodie, couldn't resist checking it out. When she saw other children taking ice cream and leaving, she mimicked them and did the same. The stall owner quickly grabbed her, insisting she pay, but the mermaid had no idea what money was. Jun-jae stepped in to pay, but when the owner asked for $5, Jun-jae realized he only had $3 on him. The owner had no choice but to let it slide. Then, the mermaid took a scoop of ice cream, and her eyes widened in surprise. After a second scoop, she was delighted, enjoying the ice cream as if she had never tasted it before. To get some cash, Jun-jae called a friend for help. They met up with the friend at a church, only to discover that his friend was also a con artist. At this moment, while trying to figure out how to con money from the woman, Jun-jae introduced the mermaid as his wife, explaining she had fallen seriously ill, and after that, she lost her ability to speak. Just as everyone felt sorry for her, the mermaid's actions created an awkward atmosphere and started talking. Jun-jae pulled her outside and asked her why she was able to talk now. The mermaid replied that she had learned how to speak overnight through the computer. Isn't that a talent? The priest arranged accommodations for them, and the mermaid mentioned she was thirsty, having been away from the water for too long. Guided by the priest, they went to a water fountain, but the mermaid didn't know how to use it. When Jun-jae turned around and saw her, he was shocked by her actions once again. The next day. They went to the beach, and Jun-jae reminisced about his mother at the seaside. Just then, a group of thugs approached them, and they both took off running. They hid in a cornfield, but the thugs were close behind. A game of cat and mouse ensued, and they finally escaped the cornfield but found themselves cornered at the edge of a cliff, with the ocean below. At that moment, with no way out, Jun-jae lied to protect the mermaid, claiming he had stolen her bracelet, and the thug leader believed him. The thug leader was furious, and the mermaid turned to look at the ocean below, her domain. Just as the thug was about to pull the trigger, the mermaid and Jun-jae jumped into the sea. Upon returning to the water, the mermaid's legs transformed into a fish tail. At that moment, Jun-jae saw her tail, and not wanting him to discover her true identity, the mermaid erased his memories. Jun-jae, forgetting about the mermaid, boarded a plane to Seoul. The mermaid looked up at the passing airplane and remembered the promise they had made. She swam day and night from Spain for 3 months to reach Seoul. By this time, the mermaid was extremely hungry and wanted to eat a bowl of spicy hot pot, but she had no money. Without resources, she was left wandering the streets. At that moment, the mermaid noticed a few students walking ahead. Driven by curiosity, she quietly followed them. She saw several girls chatting, and one girl in a black school uniform took out some money to give them. The mermaid learned from this, so the next second, she found a little girl and pulled her suitcase. Then, following what she had learned, she tried to grab the little girl's neck. At that moment, the little girl pushed the mermaid away. The mermaid realized she couldn't rob a child. The little girl taught the mermaid a lesson and even treated her to a bowl of instant noodles. Finally, the little girl told the mermaid that earning money is not easy for anyone, and if she wanted money, she had to work for it. The mermaid realized she had made a mistake. After leaving the convenience store, the little girl even gave her pocket money to the mermaid before pulling her suitcase away. The mermaid looked at the money in her hand and fell into deep thought. Meanwhile, the con artist, Jun-jae, arrived at the changing room filled with a variety of suits and uniforms, including matching hats. Looking at the sunglasses and lighters, he found himself in a garage filled with everything from ambulances to police cars and motorcycles. It was hard to believe he was a professional con artist. On the other side, the mermaid spotted the group of girls from earlier. She ran over and told them that stealing was wrong. The girls, annoyed at being interrupted, prepared to teach her a lesson. However, the mermaid wasn't afraid. She grabbed one girl by the face and warned them not to steal again. The girls were scared off by the mermaid's strength. At that moment, the girl who had been bullied received a call from her mother. It turned out that her mother was the leader of a gang group. Just like mother, like daughter. Meanwhile, the gang leader stepped into the elevator, and Jun-jae followed her in. Suddenly, the elevator malfunctioned. It was a trap set by Jun-jae. He removed his glasses, and the leader immediately recognized him as the man who had previously cheated her out of 50 billion. Confused, she wondered how he could appear before her when she had already sent someone to deal with him. Just then, the lights in the elevator went out, and Jun-jae pulled out a familiar lighter and began to hypnotize the leader. At that moment, the elevator doors opened. The gang leader's son was hanging by a thread. She desperately wanted to save him, but ultimately failed, witnessing her son fall. It turned out that the leader's son was no good, having bullied other students, which led one to jump off the rooftop. What was even worse was that the gang leader had sued the boy's parents. The mother of that child was in immense pain at that moment, and Jun-jae wanted her to experience this kind of pain, ensuring it would be unforgettable for her. After hypnotizing the leader, Jun-jae made her forget about the wrongdoings of others, but the pain of losing her son would forever remain in her mind. Once the hypnosis ended, the leader walked out with a heavy heart, withdrawing the lawsuit against the boy's mother. Meanwhile, Jun-jae and the others managed to escape the leader's pursuit. As they got into their car, they didn't notice that the mermaid had appeared behind them. She had just found some clothes in a trash bin and put them on. After encountering a female beggar, the mermaid says she was looking for a man named Jun-jae. The beggar kindly reminded her to have a specific location in mind. This prompted the mermaid to recall Jun-jae mentioning the 6-3 building. She then headed to the bus stop that led to the 6-3 building. When the bus arrived, she prepared to board, observing that others were using transit cards, some even putting them in their back pockets. She looked confused and then gave money to the driver, but it wasn't enough to pay the fare. The driver allowed her to board. After enjoying the sight on the way, the mermaid finally arrived at the base of the building. However, she accidentally walked into an aquarium and was mesmerized by the small fish swimming inside, swallowing her saliva in anticipation. The next moment, the mermaid jumped into the water, joining a seafood buffet. Feeling full, she stretched contentedly. At that moment, staff members noticed that someone had entered the water before the show was scheduled to start, leaving them surprised. Meanwhile, the real performers were making their way into the water. Visitors began taking out their phones to share the sight, as they had never seen such a beautiful mermaid before. At this time, Jun-jae also arrived at the aquarium, as it was his birthday. Growing up, his mother would always bring him to this aquarium on his birthday. The mermaid discovered Jun-jae and swam desperately towards him, tapping on the glass. However, Jun-jae couldn't hear her at all, but the mermaid didn't give up and continued to tap on the glass. Perhaps it was fate. Jun-jae finally turned around, but in his current state, he didn't recognize the beautiful creature before him and simply turned away to leave. Watching him walk away, the mermaid felt anxious and quickly swam to the surface. Once the mermaid comes out, staff members noticed her. At that moment, Jun-jae received a photo from a friend and zoomed in, realizing it looked familiar. Isn't this the mermaid from earlier, he thought, and hurried back to search for her. Meanwhile, the performers saw the mermaid and were determined to take her down. As they approached, they intended to teach the mermaid a lesson, but the mermaid effortlessly knocked one of the staff members away. The mermaid ran away from the staff members. Finally, the two met face to face. Jun-jae slowly walked toward the mermaid, who looked at him with teary eyes. Here is the end of part 1. Subscribe for more videos like this one and type in the comments if you want part 2. See you next time.